All right, Shabbat Shalom. We got the technical difficulties, I believe, squared away. And I'm just making sure that everything is good to go. Let me pop out my chat here, move it over to the other screen. And we shall be golden. And we will begin in just a moment. All right. Great, here we are. Okay, I believe I have everything set up the way I need to. I'm still learning everything here, so silent. So as far as the links that were going out, I was trying a different method to broadcast live. I was trying to shoot off of my Galaxy Note 9, and I was having a bit of difficulty trying to create the event and get the live stream out there for the people. So I had to put my PC up in here, and all right, we're ready to begin. So Shabbat Shalom to you all, and thanks for tuning in. Be sure to share the link. Also, I'm very engaging and interactive in the community channel on the YouTube. So on all my videos, if you watch them, any questions or comments that you have regarding that video, leave them in below, because I will go back and read every single comment that is in that video, and I will try to respond to an answer to every single comment as well. So whether they're questions about the teaching itself, questions that you have just in general, go through there and leave those, and I will go back and answer every single one that I can. So for this teaching, this will be kind of a spin-off of our Timothy teaching that we get into for a couple of weeks ahead on chapter 3 of 2 Timothy, I believe, or chapter 2, I don't recall. So I pulled this and kind of made my own side teaching from that particular chapter. Now this one is based on a teacher. And obviously, you know, I've been going through the leadership book by John Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Phenomenal book, very uplifting, and there's a lot of things you can learn in there. So a lot of that is also applied to the scripture, particularly in this series that I've entitled Leadership and Teaching through Timothy and Titus, Philemon, the judicial order of, I don't want to say headship, but while there is a certain role to be played in Yahweh's kingdom, how does that play out in our role here as believers in this? Starting at verse 19. We will be looking and cross-examining some parts of the Torah and the prophets, and also looking at a couple of word studies out of the Greek, and then using the polyglot to go back into the Hebrew. I believe I've only got 2 words, but they're cognitively related. They come from the same 3-letter root, so there's not going to be many different words in this one. Just to give an update on the channel and the progression of the production in the channel, I'm doing everything that I can to make everything look interactive, also look appealing to the viewers. I'm trying to, again, engage with the community of all the subscribers that I have. So any questions, whatever it is you have, opinions, I'm going to try to address them all. And I want to interact and engage with everybody who comments on these channels. I want this to be an online hangout for those who don't have a fellowship that they go to, or if they're kind of isolated, and they're just kind of at home. Maybe they're out in the sticks, they live off a grid, and internet connection is all they have, or they don't have a lot of people within their community that are Torah observant and they don't know where to go, and this is the place they come to. So I would love for this place to be an online community that we can come to and hang out and fellowship amongst one another. And so please leave comments on today's particular video. What I'll be talking about again is to teach, to a teacher, Brother Rick Cowis down in Conroe near Houston. I was talking to him last night, and he was the one who kind of pushed me over to get this teaching up today. So thanks, Brother Rick. I appreciate it. I wasn't going to do one. I was going to intend on doing it next week, but then I realized I was going to be out of town next week, and I don't know if I will be able to broadcasts from my location. I'll be at the Cisco Assembly, and if I can, I will live stream from their assembly right onto my channel so people can tune in and get a taste of what they're like. I'm going down there just to hang out with some brothers that invited me from another assembly. So I'll be going down there just to hang out for a couple of days and fellowship with the brothers there. Also for Passover, I will be live streaming during Passover. So people that don't have a place to go to for Passover, they can come to this channel, Torah and Messiah, to also find. All right, I don't know what that was about, but hopefully I'm back up. So for Passover, I will be finding a way to also broadcast live on location from where I'll be, so people can tune in and hear teachings there, or just fellowship with the people. Because I'd like to have this channel as an online community. So without further ado, let us begin. So again, today's teaching is about teachers or teaching. What does it mean to go out and teach and raise up taught ones or make disciples? What is our commissioning here in the body in today's world? So what I want to ask you, the viewers, right off the top is, what do you think? And I'm okay with your opinions, because we can look in the Word together. And if you come up with a different answer than what I have, then share them with me and we can discuss it. We can kind of have an online forum in the community of the chat section here on this YouTube channel, where we can all get involved and engage with one another. That's what I would like. So please, what do y'all think a teacher should look like that comes out of the scripture? And hopefully the teaching that I have put together can help be a springboard for your study, to enhance your studies, to kind of further grow your knowledge and maybe give you some extra scriptures to look at if you didn't think of these, and vice versa. We can all sharpen each other. So Matthew 28 and verse 19. Let me do one thing, because I do need to, there's a couple other things I wanted to say before we begin, so I apologize, and I need to send out a link. To a couple of folks, so bear with me. I'll try to multitask as I go through here and do that. Something I'm not the best at, when multiple things have my attention at once, but just 1 second. Not what I wanted to happen. Okay, let's see. All right, let's see if this works. We can try that. And there's one more. Sorry, guys. Emailing list. Let me remember the emailing list. I created the email list from after last Shabbat when I was telling y'all to send me all your emails so I could put out a newsletter. I'm also writing that myself, so very time consuming, but I'm trying to pull this together to get it out. So if you did not receive an email, I don't know if I'll have you on my email list, or maybe I forgot to add you, because I figured that out that I've done that. So please send me your email at ymtx777@gmail.com, and I'll add you to my subscriber list. And that way I can send you out the weekly newsletters with these links. If some of you have received 2, it's because I sent them out twice, because I'm trying to figure out how to send them out manually to people, and I'm not sure how to do that. So I think to do that, I need to include my own email on the email list so I can receive a copy of the newsletter. Then I can just forward it out manually to individuals who didn't receive one. So that'll be the only other way that I can think of right now, until I learn how to go in there manually and select the ones that I want to get the newsletter that didn't get it, that weren't on the list, because I don't want to bombard people's inbox with the same newsletter 4 or 5 times. Send out this link one more time. Hopefully this is the correct link I'm sending out. I don't know. I'm trying to send it to Brother Larry and Sister Jackie. They asked, so trying to give it over to them. I don't know if they're there. I don't see them in the chat room, so just keep an eye out for them, and let us begin. Father Yahweh, we thank you for your Shabbat. We thank you for your day of rest. We just ask that you would be with us, guide us, lead us into all truth, and protect us from harm, sin, and evil, Father. And I pray for all those who will watch this in the future or share it with their friends, that their ears and eyes may be opened so that they can not just take my word for it, but use this as a way to further enhance their study, to draw closer to you, Father, and maybe challenge myself to point out something to me that if I have something wrong, I can go back and dig deeper into your word to either make the corrections or further grow my understanding of how we are to behave, how we are to act as people, as your people within this world, Father. So I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to stand before your sheep and your flock and to speak on your behalf for them, Father. And I continually pray for your humility to be in me, and your humbleness to be upon me, and to keep my flesh subjected so that I may be able to have compassion, your compassion to be shown on the people, and that they may see your light within me, so these people can be guided according to your word and your instructions, Father, not for my own glory or not for my own gain, but Father, for your glory, because it's all about you. It's not about me. It's not about us. It's about bringing glory and honor to you, Father. And I thank you for the people that are here. And I just pray an abundance of blessings upon their households and protection, guarding their mind and hearts. Thank you. We pray this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Hallelujah. All right. So again, let's try this one more time. Let's begin in Matthew 28 and verse 19. Then having gone, disciple, many English versions have the word teach, especially King James. And that's our Greek number 3100 that we'll be looking at. Then having gone, disciple or teach all nations, the Goyim, or the lost sheep of Israel, because those are the ones we're to go out and draw in. The ones that are part of Israel will come into the fold. They will hear their calling. Baptizing them into the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things, whatever I commanded you. And behold, I am with you all the days until the completion of age. Amen. All right. So I wanted to go back over Matthew chapter 8, verse 5, because this will kind of show this judicial order as we get into our other epistles from Shaul, especially in Philemon. We'll see this kind of ranking. And I believe some of the churches out in the world do a great job of their hierarchy, but there's a certain way to organize their order. It shouldn't be the pyramid scheme where you've got one man on top and then everybody underneath, and you've got to rank up through this kind of ladder to reach that man on the top. It should be a cooperative or a collaborative effort of everybody together as kind of like an advisory board, as we see in the Tanakh or the Torah with Moshe, that was putting people together over certain groups of people to handle the right rulings and the judgments that were to partake in that body of people. The burden was too big for Moshe to do it all alone, so he had to choose people. So how do we know who is properly equipped to rightly handle the word and to guide Yahweh's people? Because we got to remember, we can't hurt or offend. Now, I'm using that word loosely there, but we can't offend Yahweh's little ones. And so I'm not saying that we're not to be passive on judging them. Well, we shouldn't really be judging them, but according to the Torah, when we see our brothers or sisters in sin, it's correction is a better word to put. There's different definitions for each of these words that have kind of been redefined politically or correctly to kind of fit our culture today, but we need to look at them under the microscope of the Torah and the scriptures. So I want to go to Matthew chapter 8, because we'll see the Roman centurion that came to Yeshua, which is very interesting because he needed some healing in his house. If you got the scriptures, it's on page 926, scriptures translation, chapter 8, verse 5, but I'll read it verse 1, and it says, "And when he came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. And see, a leper came and bowed before him, saying, Master, if you desire, you are able to make me clean. And stretching out his hand, Yeshua touched him, saying, I desire it. Be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Yeshua said to him, See, mention it to no one, but go your way. Show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moshe commanded as a witness to them. And when Yeshua had entered Capernaum, that's Capernaum, a captain came to him, appealing to him." So this is obviously a captain of the Roman centurion. And he said, Master, my servant is lying in the house paralyzed, grievously tortured. Yeshua said to him, I shall come and heal him. And the captain answering had said, Master, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only say a word, and my servant shall be healed. So this kind of couples in the faith with the belief, and this is great because we see a lot of people that just think you just have to have this mental ascension or this intellectual belief that all we got to do is know of the existence or know that he's there. But there's more to it because he says, look, just only say a word and my servant shall be healed, because I too am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. I say to this one, go, and he goes. To another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this. And that's the key. Do this. And he does it. So there's a certain thing that we're to do underneath our Messiah and his headship here in this world, that we're to go out and bring the news to people to properly instruct them and rightly rule them according to the word. So we can see the chain of command, but I think the chain of command in today's hierarchy of churches has been abruptly abused, if I could use it that way. It's been harshly mistreated. And he says, and when Yeshua heard, he marveled and said to those who followed, truly, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great belief. So the man knew that this guy, the Messiah, Yeshua, could heal or bring healing through his word and his command. All he said to do was, all you have to do is say it, and it's done. You don't have to come to my house because I know. And he said, because I too have soldiers under me, and when I tell this one to do this, they do it. And so he knew through his practice of his belief, it was strong enough that by the word, it would come to fruition, and it would bring forth the healing. So that's the belief aspect, that we're to walk out unto the righteousness. And so when Yeshua is saying, wow, I say to you that not even in Israel have I found such great belief, because we have the religious traditions of that time in the scribes and the Pharisees and the people around, that they were subdued to the traditions of man. And we see all that all throughout Shaul's writings. And so these people didn't have a great belief unto the governing authority of Yahweh's word. The belief was to the governing bodies of the scribes and the Pharisees and the systems that they had set up. The very same thing that we see today is that the authority is coming from the man behind the pulpit within the churches, but it's not truly coming from the word of Yah. This is what governs and directs our lives. And this is what we use. And when we walk by this, it will separate us from the world and from other people. I've got a funny short story to tell you. At work yesterday, I had a guy who was near the end of the day. It was around 4:30, and I dumped a load of dirt for a guy that was making a driveway. And he's like, are you bringing the second load? I needed 2 loads. And I said, no, I probably won't have time to go get back to the material yard to get your sand to bring it back before they close. And he said, okay, are you going to deliver it tomorrow? I said, no, it won't be me. I go, tomorrow's the Sabbath day. I don't work. Well, before I said that, I said, I don't work on Saturdays. And he said, how do you pay the bills? I said, well, hey, my king blesses me because tomorrow is the Sabbath day, and I keep that day set apart. I should have gone in to being more correct by saying actually tonight at sundown, but I didn't. I just said tomorrow's the Sabbath day. So that's my fault. And he laughed at me. He said, "Saturday's a Sabbath?" I said, "Yeah, actually it is." And he laughed at me and he just said, "Well, okay, whatever." And that was the end of our conversation. So how he's going to get that material, I don't know. But I've that happens to me quite a bit whenever I tell people when they ask if I'm going to run on Saturdays, and I say no because I remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and that's the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday. And I get two responses most of the time, and that's, "Oh, are you Jewish?" I'm like, "No," and they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, are you Seventh Day Adventist?" I'm like, "No," and most 9 times out of 10, they go, "Okay," and they just carry on about their business, and I'm like, "Well, weird." I think I've only had like two fruitful conversations that I've got to actually sow seed into people, but they still haven't came to anything. But it's okay. I at least got to share my beliefs. So I kind of got off sidetracked and forgot what my point was. But I wanted to share going into the polyglot with this word, and I've got a lot of um, places out of the Torah and the prophets that we can link to, and then we're going to hang out in a spot from Psalm 106 in just a moment. But when we take this word teach in the Greek, it's 3100. I'll actually have to go in there and grab my book. I didn't have it in here. I thought I did, but all right. For next time, we'll work on audio, video, lighting, and things like that. I'm trying to find the best possible way to do these um, for the viewer enhancement. All right. So in this book right here, this is the Englishman's Greek Concordance to the New Testament. This is a really great resource. It's kind of like a bridge that will help you, and it'll connect where each of these words in the Greek are located. So, Lynn, thanks for posting it in the chat room. The Greek number 3100. So what you would do is you would go in here and find the Strong's number 3100. 3100 actually comes from 3101, which comes from 3129. So when we go back to 3129 on page 470, we got Manthano in the Greek. And then we've got down here at the bottom, there's Manthano, and we got all those scripture references of what that Greek word means. Or I'm sorry, where it's used in its context. So the Greek number 3100 in the Strong's says it comes from 3101 and intransitively to become a pupil, transitively to disciple, that is, enroll as scholar. So Greek number 3101 says a learner, that is a pupil, and it comes from Greek 3129. Now, Greek 3129, manthano, is what I was showing you in this Englishman's, says prolonged from a primary verb, another form of which, matheo, is used as an alternate in certain tenses, to learn in any way. And what we're going to see is that the way in which we're to learn is the way of Yah. And when we trace this back in the polyglot, it'll take us to Strong's Hebrew number 3925. Okay, so just using the concordance here, Matthew 9:13, but go ye and learn what that meaneth. Matthew 11:29, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Now I want to stop there because when Yeshua says to take his yoke upon yourself and to learn from him, he didn't come with a new set of rules or a new religion or new commandments or do any way with any other commandments. And I know all of y'all know this, but there's some people that I've talked to that don't know this, or they seem to think he might have come with something different. And they've been tuning in recently and sending me questions. As a matter of fact, let me see if one did come in. I do need to send him the link too. You have to forgive me too, because on the description I forgot to change for today's topic. I put on there continuing into the teaching of Timothy, but this is a little different, but it's going to stem from that as we see later on. So I want to know what y'all think right off the bat, what it means to be a teacher, just going off, well, no, not to be a teacher, but what it means then having gone out, raise up taught ones or disciple or teach all nations, baptizing them into the name of the Father and the Son. What does that mean to you? Leave your comment again under the video and I'll go back and read them and I'll try to respond to them. But I want to know what your thoughts are concerning that scripture and the other ones that we get into. And then I'll show you the Hebrew word lamed much later that we'll get into from this word to learn in the Greek, mantheno. And so take my yoke upon you and learn from me. If we go back to John chapter 7, verses 14 through 16, we'll see that Yeshua says, my teaching is not from me, or is not my own, but from him who sent me. Going back to Deuteronomy 18, I think I touched on this 2 weeks ago, or last week, rather, that Yahweh was going to raise up a prophet from your brother's midst, like Moshe, and he's going to put his words in his mouth, and that he will listen to you, or you should listen to him. And if those who don't listen to him, this is like the greater Shema, as opposed to the traditional Shema of Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. But where we were to Shema, the words placed inside this prophet he would raise up, in which was Yeshua. Now going on in a couple of other examples here, we got Matthew 24:32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. And if you're familiar with any of Brad Scott's teachings, you know the principle of the seed and the parable of the sower. And Yeshua says that if you learn the parable of the sower, you'll know all things, because everything pertains to the principle of the seed concerning the parable of the sower. If I could say that any faster, I would. Acts 23:27, Romans chapter 16, verse 17, to the doctrine which ye have learned. Now we can go down there and break down that exact context, but I'm just going to say that the doctrine that we should learn is the doctrine concerning the Torah and the prophets, because as we'll see in 2 Timothy chapter 3, Shaul is commending or charging Timothy to stay in the doctrine that he was brought up in. Chapter 16, verse 17, then, out of Romans. We'll see that he says, stay in what you have learned from a babe and what you've trusted and known, the set apart scriptures. Well, they didn't have the New Testament then, so obviously it was the Tanakh, or what we refer to as the Old Testament. So again, another really great resource, this one here. Sometimes, depending on the publisher, it might look a little different. All right, so going back into the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which it's in my other bookshelf, we can trace this word, the Strong's Greek number 3129 is what we're going to trace back into the Septuagint, because 3100 and 3101 are not there. We got to trace back the actual where it came from, 3129. And Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9 says, only be on guard for yourself and keep your soul carefully, that you do not forget the things which your eyes have seen, and that they do not depart from your heart all the days of your life. And you shall make them known to your sons and to your sons' sons. This is kind of an extension of what we'll read in Deuteronomy 6:11 about you shall teach your sons and your grandsons all these things along the way, when you lie down, when you rise up, when you sit down, when you go about the way. Verse 10, the day that you stood before Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb, when Yahweh said to me, gather the people to me, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn. And that's Strong's Hebrew number 3925. He says that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on earth, and that they may teach their sons. So you see that we're commanded to not only just learn this for our own sake, but we're to share this with our direct family members, our sons in our household, because what was the duty of the son? Ben, the seed that comes forth from the house. So the seed was to continue forth and bring this same knowledge as a continual, or like a perpetual generation passing down to generation, these same instructions. So we should be able to look around us in the world abroad and see the instructions of Yahweh, but we don't, because I think our forefathers and ourselves have very much so failed to teach these things to our family for whatever reason that may be. Going back into Deuteronomy chapter 31 in verse 12, we have assemble the people, the men and the women and the little ones, and your sojourner who is within your gates, so that they hear, Shema, and so that they learn. Strong's Hebrew number 3925, to fear Yahweh, your Elohim, and guard to do all the words of this Torah, or the law. I know many people out there say, we can't do it. It was too hard. That's why he came and did away with the law. But we know that it wasn't too hard to do. Shabbat Shalom, Korain. We know for a fact they weren't too hard to do, because he says in Deuteronomy 12 that the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart. For out of the abundance of the heart, so the mouth speaks. So Psalm 119, verse 11 and 12 says, I treasure up your word in my heart so that I might not sin against you. So it's always been an issue with the heart of man. If we can get the heart right by correcting and working on our inside, then everything out of the outside will express itself by what we believe on the inside. You'll be able to see that. That's why Yeshua says, you shall know them by their fruits, because they will live out what they believe internally. All right, so let's go over to Psalm 106. We'll look at the beginning verses, and then we're going to hone in right there on verse 36. But I'll read some of it from the beginning first. And we're going to kind of compare this to what we see today within our nation. How can we correlate these two patterns from then into now? And what can we do about it? Or what should we do about it? Should we do anything about it? Again, leave me your thoughts and opinions of what we should do, how we should be going about other people and raising up taught ones or making disciples. How are we to teach them? How are we to bring this knowledge of this word to a nation that is lost in darkness? All right, Psalm 106. Again, if you're using the scriptures, it's on page 706. Nope, it's on 707. I didn't realize how long Psalm 105 was. So Psalm 106, we'll start at verse 3. Blessed are those who guard right ruling, who do righteousness at all times. Remember me, O Yahweh, in the acceptance of your people. Visit me with your deliverance. And I believe that he did come and visit us in his deliverance as Yeshua. Verse 5, to see the good of your chosen ones. Now remember, Yeshua said the same thing in Matthew, I don't remember what chapter, we can Google that, but he says that remember, for many are called, yet few are chosen. Here he says, to see the good of your chosen ones, to rejoice in the gladness of your nation. So it's almost as if within this world, we're going to have a nation within a nation. We've got our democracy of the United States of America, and within this democracy or republic, it's kind of a bipartisan thing. It's half Roman, half Grecian. Go figure. We have a nation of people made up of people in the covenant with Yahweh. How can we take this knowledge and bring it to our nation, to our leaders? Because we'll see in, I think, Romans 13, and I read in last week in Timothy that it's a good thing for us to be praying for our leaders over our nation, that they are in authority for a reason. But again, as you see in any news channel, much of our politicians are corrupted. They're led by their own ego. They're led by financial gain, and they're paid off a lot by lobbyists. And I don't know if y'all know anything about Michael Cohen and the hearing he had before the committee. There's a lot of things I learned from watching that on TV. The only reason why I got to see it is I was in a hotel room down in Marble Falls a couple of days ago, and I turned on Fox News and or C-SPAN and saw that the committee hearing was on. So I got to listen in on it for a while. Very interesting. Just to think the compromises that our government makes for their own selfish gain. And we can look about a lot of people just within our neighborhood or within our communities, and we see the same thing. People are always looking out for their own, and people looking out for themselves instead of a greater good. They're trying to see how they can cut the person down in front of them to get ahead of them, advance quicker and quicker. I'll tell you, my goal here is not to teach you what you should think, but rather teach you how to think for yourself. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree with me. We can agree to disagree. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that, because until our king comes back, there are going to be disagreements that we all share. We don't have to be in agreement with every little thing. And I just don't believe that we'll ever be that way, because we're our own people. We're still in this body of flesh, and we're still trying to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. Hallelujah. So verse 6, we have sinned with our fathers. We have acted perversely, and we have done wrong. So here the writer admits that he has done wrong, they've acted perversely, and they've sinned with their fathers. And if you go back into the Torah, we'll see that they had sinned in the wilderness. And he warns them not to follow in the footsteps of their fathers. Christy Yalin, Shabbat Shalom to you. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to leave your comments under the video below and let us know what you think. We started out with this verse in Matthew 28:19. Then having gone, disciple or teach all nations. What does it mean to teach the nations is what we're talking about. What does a teacher look like? And getting back on point here, we can see that our forefathers, our ancestors, if we're in the cultivated olive tree of Israel, whether we're native born or we're sojourners who were grafted into that cultivated olive tree with Israel, we partake in the same instructions, and we are now fellow citizens, and we are now that one tree. You know, we're not two houses. We should be two houses coming together as one family with one husband, Yahweh Almighty, one king, right? We shouldn't be divided. We have sinned with our fathers. We have acted perversely. We have done wrong. Our fathers in Egypt did not understand your wonders. They did not remember your many loving commitments, but rebelled by the sea of reeds. But he saved them for his name's sake, to make known his might, his power. And he rebuked the sea of reeds, and it dried up, and he led them through the depths, through a wilderness, and he saved them from the hand of the hater, and redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. And waters covered their adversaries, not one of them was left. Then they believed his words. They sang his praise, and then look right after this verse 13, they soon forgot. So that's why the psalmist in Psalm 119 says, how do I not sin against you? By storing or treasuring up your word within my heart, so I do not forget. That's why Shaul says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind of the word, not conforming to this world. Don't conform, but transform yourself. Constantly renewing your life, always making sure that your flesh is in subjection to the word. All right, let's go down to verse 36. Okay. So they served their idols, and they became a snare to them. Now, I wanted to point that verse out because what is our nation today looking like? And this is what I was talking about, Michael Cohen before the committee. We see that we have our corrupted politicians in the White House or in DC. We have the corrupted companies, these mega corporations, the bankers, the pharmaceutical companies, um, the agricultural industry, the industrial industry. Everything is driven by power, money, and greed, self gain. There's corruption in almost every industry. There's bad apples in every industry, even with their own belief. There's wolves in sheep's clothing. We're told to look out for these things. The president and the leaders of the nation were told to reach out and pray for. But are they providing a false influence and a false hope into the people? Are they instilling a false comfort into the people? We see that a lot. Where does our comfort, where does our hope come from? How do we bring that hope and restoration to people who are deceived? How do we, I'm trying to remember a quote that Albert Einstein had said. It's easier to be deceived than to convince people they are deceived, I believe is what it was that he said. I'll have to look that up and share it with y'all later. What about the government of Yahweh? How are the people, the embodiment of the people of Yah, to respond and to act to these wicked government entities? Lynn says the FDA here. How are we to respond and act? How are we to get our voice out? I know that things are going to prophetically take its place, but are we supposed to just stand back and sit in our closet and just let it pass by without making a peep or a sound? If you go back in time and look at our brothers and sisters in the first century, we can see that they made a stand against some of these evil governing bodies. And many of them were put in prison or exiled or beheaded or killed. And I think some of that we have lost, or it's become really watered down over the many years. We just kind of become complacent and say, well, there's nothing we can do. I'm only one person. How can I make an impact? Well, it's when we unite together as one and make an impact and let our voice be heard. I'm not saying that we go out picketing and rioting and things like that, but we can come together and make a loud enough noise that will eventually cause a ripple effect if we spread it. One match can start a single forest fire. We need to be that spark, and we can allow that spark to come from the word to ignite us to a darkened world. So how do we respond and how do we act as a nation under Yah? I want to look at Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 1. Hear the word which Yahweh speaks to you, O house of Israel. Verse 2. Thus said Yahweh, do not learn the way of the nations, and do not be awed by the signs of the heavens, for the nations are awed by them. We've got a lot of footnotes here. If you've got the scriptures version, it'll show you references that you can go back and look up in the prophets, the Torah, and the Brit concerning that verse. So do not learn the way of the nations. The nations have their own way that they go about doing things. We can see that in our world today. Don't be swayed by the influence of the world. Don't let that come onto you, because eventually enough of it will be, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Mark Twain. Mark Twain, I said Albert Einstein. Good one. Thank you for looking out, Mark. So what are we to do as a people of Yah to act, to respond to corruption outside in our world? It makes me think of Nebuchadnezzar and his unrighteous kingdom that he had. Daniel, his three buddies. It's sad. I don't know their Hebrew names. I only know their Babylonian names: Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. But they took a stand, and it cost them their lives. But our King had mercy upon them and showed his glory through their belief and their reverence for Yah by showing up in the fire and struck down the pride of that evil king. So do not learn the way of the nations, Jeremiah 10:2. Now go with me to Judges chapter 21, verse 25, and also Judges chapter 17, verse 6. They're the same thing. It says, in those days there was no sovereign in Israel. There was no king. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now, here in our country, we do have leaders. We do have a presidential candidate or leader, whatever you want to call him. We do have a cabinet. He does have his Oval Office. And what are we to do? I mean, we have sovereigns, but our own Constitution that was supposedly founded on by the Scripture is almost an element of antiquity now. It's trying to be made done away with, obsolete, much like the Old Testament. And the instructions that will prod us along the way and guide us on this walk to get to a certain place. You know, the administration under Reagan or these other people, these other presidents, it's much different today under this administration, which I think it's a little better than our previous 8 years that we had under a Barack Obama administration, but it still doesn't matter because even if you're missing the mark by a little bit, you're still missing the mark. And we have to make those corrections, be able to stand firm and be steadfast. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So go with me to the Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 12 and verse 8. Says the same thing. Do not do as we are doing here today, each one doing whatever is right in his own eyes. This takes me to Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12. The very same thing is also said in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 25. There is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. If you look around about us, we've got Christianity, Catholicism, Presbyterianism, Episcopalianism, Pentecostalism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim, however you want to pronounce that. We have many different religions. In all these ways, they seem right to that man or that woman or that child. But its end is going to lead them to utter destruction or death. And we know that the first and second resurrection are key. Obviously, the first is what we're aiming for because the second death has no power over those in the first. That's where our goal should be aimed at. That's where we want to get to. And we can see how we can get there. So look at Proverbs 21, verse 2. There's so many things we can learn from the Proverbs. And this is evident of what we just read in Proverbs 14 and 16. Proverbs 21, verse 2 says, all a man's ways are right in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the hearts. Again, it goes back to the matter of the heart. Psalm 119, verse 10 and 11. How do I not sin against you? By treasuring or storing up your word in my heart. Because if it's in here, the very central being of man, if it's in here, it's going to come out here, and it's going to come out in his outward expression, his life, his actions will display what's in his heart. This is also reminiscent of Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 12. For the word of Elohim is living and working and sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through even to the dividing of being and spirit and of joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and the intentions of the heart. So as long as we're transforming ourselves with this word each and every day, it should always be piercing our thoughts and our hearts to see what's in there that needs to get out and what we need to put back in there to shove the things that are lustful. We need to excise the wicked, cancerous elements of our heart with the scalpel of the word to input within us the very right rulings that will teach us and guide us to not sin against our King and our Creator. Psalm 139 and verse 23, search me. This isn't the psalmist being arrogant here. This is him saying, search me, O El, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there's an idolatrous way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. What is that way of everlasting? It's the first resurrection, because we know that the second resurrection isn't the way of everlasting. That's like the way that, oh man, I got in by the skin of my teeth, barely made it, but we're here. I mean, that's not the way of everlasting, because those that make the second resurrection, they still can falter to the second death. So that first resurrection is what we're trying to aim for. And that first resurrection is that way of everlasting life. That way that is instructing us, the Shaul says in the Acts that we're followers of the way to everlasting life, which is given through the Son, which is Yeshua, came from the house, that seed that didn't return back to the Father void. That way, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So as the thoughts pursue one another in the mind, there's temptations are made, and again abandoned if we transform ourselves correctly to the word, using the word to cut through the wickedness that's in this flesh. The state of the heart is someone like that of chaos before creation. But when finally the right thought and the right utterance for it are found, that which is found appears to us, not as if it's self-discovered, but it is a gift. It's the gift from the grace and the mercy of Yah that He's had from the very beginning when we screwed up in the garden. We regard it with the feeling that a higher power has influenced our thoughts and imagings, but that higher power is Yahweh who influenced us through His Word. Remember, I'd said in Matthew 11:39, I think, I can't remember, that put my yoke upon you, for learn from me, is what Yeshua had said. He was completely obedient, and all we have to do is follow after Him. If we say we know Him and we don't walk as He walked, then the truth is not in us, and we're made out to be liars. That's what the Word says. Psalm 119, verse 73 says, your hands have made me and formed me. Make me understand, that I might learn your commands. So there's that word learn again. Strong's Hebrew number 3925. Stay tuned. We'll cover that in its pictorial meaning here soon. Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 17 says, learn to do good. Guess what the word learn is again there? Lamed. Strong's Hebrew number 3925. Seek right ruling. Reprove the oppressor. Defend the fatherless. And plead for the widow. How many people out there watching do you know widows that are uncared for? That who knows when the last time they've been checked on is? I would like somehow in the future, Yah willing, for us to have an outreach that we can create to help those that can't get the adequate help they need from their brothers and sisters that are of the fatherless and that are widowed. That'd be something great that we can do and work together as a team to contribute to help those out. Isaiah 117, learn to do good, seek right ruling, reprove the oppressor, defend the fatherless, and plead for the widow. And again, if you're just tuning in, this goes back to how we're to teach and raise up disciples. And we're kind of hanging out in this area from Psalm 106, getting into kind of what we're to learn to do and how we're to help others learn and grow, how we're to teach them. What does it mean to be a teacher? What are your opinions on what it means to be a teacher? Yes, I want to know your opinions. Many people say, I don't care to want to know your opinion. I want to know what the word says. Yes, that's true, but I want to interact and engage with you in the chat section. I will read your comments, and I will try to answer them all. James chapter 1, verse 25, but he that looked into the perfect law, that of freedom, and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets. Remember, we had read back earlier in Psalm 106 that they forgot his works. They were a hearer who forgot. What happens if you hear all the time? You're going to forget. You got to be continually active upon what you're doing so it becomes a part of you. You have to engage with what you're learning in order to put it into action. Be a doer of work. This one shall be blessed in his doing of the law, or the Torah, the instructions of Yahweh. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, so here we go, we have the heart again, this one's religion is worthless. Clean and undefiled religion before the Elohim and the Father is this, to visit orphans, that's the fatherless, and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. What did Yeshayah or Isaiah say? Learn to do good, seek the right ruling, reprove the oppressor, defend the fatherless, that's the orphan, and plead for the widow. Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 16, bind up the witness and seal the instruction, the Torah, or the law, among my taught ones. If you're using something like an NIV or NLT or King James, it'll say disciples. And that number is Strong's Hebrew 3928. And that's cognitely related with 3925. And they share the same root, they come from the same root, and they have the very same meaning. It's just one is a noun, the other is a verb. We can get into that here in a moment. I've already covered the Greek words that we took out of Matthew 28 for disciple or teach all nations. So I'm going to ask you all a question. What does it mean to disciple or teach all the nations? You know, we can get into the construct of types of headship or this judicial governing order within the body as we have it today, with Shaul saying that there's prophets, apostles, teachers, pastors, evangelists. There are certain reasons for these. How are we to all act together? How are we to come together as one? How are we to be with one another without dividing? I mean, I see more division in the truth than I do within their own error. So Strong's Hebrew number 3925 is Lamed, the picture of the actual Lamed, the shepherd's staff. It's the word for it, Lamed, Lamed Mem Dalet. It's a primitive root, and it properly means to goad. I don't have a got my handy bamboo stick here. To goad somebody, to push them along, you know, goad them along. Come on, let's go. It helps. Sometimes we often need that help because of insecurity, fear, whatever may be holding us back. We always sometimes need that little push to get us off that high dive, because it's that little push that makes us realize, wow, I was missing out. That is, by implication, to teach. The rod being an oriental incentive. I believe Jesse posted in the chat section earlier in Binner's Lexicon. It's on page 362, number 2311, section V. At section V, we'll have Lamed, the Lamed, the Mem, and the Dal, or the Dalet. And you'll have its action means to learn. Concretely, it was to goad. We don't know abstractly, but it says the directing the path of the ox by goading it. A learning by goading. It says comes from the two-letter root, the Lamed and the Mem, goading. We don't have to get into the semantics of all that and trace it back to its two-letter root right now. If you look underneath that section V, you'll see that that's where your Strong's number 3925 is, and it says learn. And then it's frequenced 86 times out of the King James Version. And you got some different words in the English that they translate from that one Hebrew word. We got teach, learn, instruct, teacher, skillful, and expert. So sometimes, depending on how they're using the context, it might take us away from its concrete meaning, but I think those are okay in and of itself to justify what's being said there. Now, earlier, whenever I was talking about in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 16, that bind the Torah among my disciples or my taught ones, came from the same word. If you look down at section E, D, M, so section E, you'll see there your Strong's number. See if I can show you up close. You'll see there it is, the E, the D, the M, Lamed. There's two additional letters added, the Yod and the Wa. And then it says student, one who is goaded in a direction. So let me ask you, can somebody goad you in the wrong direction? Think of many of the universities or the seminaries that are out there. They goad people into the way of their bias. They are leading students literally under their own biased seminary, whether it's Baptist, um, Presbyterian, Catholic, or there's so many different schools of theology that are out there, and that's what they do. They goad you into their belief systems of their theology. So, what are they doing wrong? They're instructing students. First of all, they're teaching them what to think. They're not teaching them how to think for themselves using the scripture. They're giving them an overload of information concerning archaeology, geography, history. And, I love both secular and religious history, and I have some tools here to aid and study to help understand, because so much stuff over 2,000 years has been swept under the rug that it's tough, but if we use the word and if we can kind of go back into time, um, and see how the Hebrews lived and what their system of justice was like, then we can kind of make some correlations there and see if anything's relevant, irrelevant, if it was matched up to the word, not to the word. I mean, the word does a good job, a great job in of itself of interpreting itself. Man, myself, other people, we just tend to get in the way and overcomplicate it, which really it's overly simplified. Uh, you know, Christy Yalin says, perhaps a teacher is one who instructs, makes difficult things easy to understand, and leads others into understanding. Shaul or Paul was a teacher to the Gentiles. 2 Timothy 1:11. Very good connection. I want to say that I wonder why they chose Paul as a teacher to the Gentiles, much like they chose Moshe, who is an Egyptian, to lead the Hebrews. Both men were kind of connected. You've got the mighty man of Shaul in the New Testament, who was a Hebrew of Hebrews, and I believe the reason why he was chosen, this is my opinion, is because that very fact that he was a Hebrew of Hebrews. He knew the Torah. To be able to sit at the feet of his teacher Gamliel, he had to recite the very Torah by heart. So you wanted somebody who understood the idioms, the ins and outs of the Torah, because you wouldn't want to choose a Gentile to teach the Gentiles, a Gentile who knows nothing. You would want someone raised up in the Torah and the foundations of the very word itself to go out and lead people in the teachings of the Mashiach. You know, makes difficult things easy to understand. This is why Yeshua also says to learn the parables. And that's why he used parables. The parables, this is what the Proverbs, Mishle, it's a parable. It's trying to use a story to elaborate a point or some type of scriptural precedent. That's the wrong word. A scriptural, trying to use a story to elaborate on the scripture to bring it to life so that, like you're saying, people can understand, is what Yeshua had always did, made the difficult things common, made the secrets of Elohim revealed, was what Shaul said. Student, one who is goaded in a direction. So if we're to goad one another in a direction, if you look within the assemblies of our belief system, whether it's Messianic, Hebraic roots, sacred name, or whatever, there's so much division because so many people are wanting to divide over simplistic matters. I think we need to focus on the weightier things. All these little minute details that we want to fine tune, we can do that in our own personal life. Again, it's working our own salvation with fear and trembling. As a body, the very core of the matter should be the Mashiach, the immersion into the name of the Mashiach, and teaching people, just like in Acts 15, forsake these things. This is one thing I believed in the past, and I'm trying to reprioritize it. Because if I want to reach Christians, or if I want to reach people who don't have any knowledge at all whatsoever, what are some things I would like them to forsake? Obviously, their wicked ways. And for Christians, it's really hard to understand because, one, they don't know. They take that word wicked and they think of Charlie Manson, baby killers, rapers, and things of that nature. So they've created themselves a picture they've like painted a picture of themselves and not placed them in that category. They're like, well, I'm not that, so I'm not wicked. But anything that's in opposition or contrary to Yahweh's word, to him is wicked. That's just the word used. Maybe one day you should pick a parable as your discussion on the Hangout. Absolutely, I'll do it. So if we can help instruct Christians the truth about the Sabbath day by showing them through history that it was Constantine, his decrees and his edicts in AD 324, the Edict of Milan, when he declared Christianity the universal religion over the empire, and he changed the Sabbath, the seventh day Sabbath, over to the first day, Solus Invictus, Dia del Sol, the day of the sun, that people just kind of out of fear, if you can't beat them, join them type thing. And I think the fear mongering really worked. If so many people are getting pushed out, exiled, and killed, let's just conform to this guy. Remember, learn not the way of the nations. Goad yourself into the instructions of our Messiah. So before we get to what disciple is in the Hebrew, I wanted to go to, so we have the Strong's Hebrew 3925, and we've got the Lamed, the Mim, and the Dalet here. And then after this video, there's also in the comments underneath, not just the chat section here of the YouTube itself, but there's actual comments that you can leave under the video from the YouTube channel. And that's where I can interact and engage with more comments there. Those are showed publicly without even having to watch the video. So let me know what your thoughts are about what a teacher is or how we're supposed to go about teaching people within the body. So many people want to take this powerful authoritative position and lord over people, their power and their authority, which I don't know if that's a proper way. I think we're losing too many to that aggressiveness. I think, we need to rethink or re-strategize our philosophy on the way Yeshua had walked and had compassion on many people. And obviously he rebuked the scribes and Pharisees a lot, but there was good reason for why he did that. And it tells us, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, the very reason because they elevated their own traditions over him. They were blind to the light standing directly there in front of them. So 3925, we've got Lamed, the Mim, and the Dalet. And we know that this here, the Lamed, is the picture of the shepherd's staff. That's what denotes the goading with the staff. You can also bring your sheep in. It could be used as a weapon to fend off evil predators that were trying to harm the flock. I'm missing, never mind, I got it right here. I was going to say, I'm missing some scriptures that I included for here. It pertains to this word. The Mim represents the water. So we know water can bring about chaos, as we read whenever in Psalm 106, when he drowned all the Mitzrites in the water from the Sea of Reeds. And then we got the Dalet, the picture of the door. The door can hang. You can go in and out of a door, in from one place and out to another. So what does each letter mean combined when formed to make the word Lamed? If you remember, it came from this two-letter root right here, Lamed Mim, for goading. So I wanted to put it to you this way, with Lamed Mim Dalet. The guidance by our teacher, that is Yeshua. Remember, he is our teacher. We look to him. Don't look to me. Don't look to anybody else. I'm just here to help. I'm here to help enlighten some things, to maybe share with you, to help you further enhance your own personal study. Again, I might be wrong. I don't have all the answers, and I never will. Not until he comes back. And it's okay to disagree with me. Totally okay with that. But just by going off what the context of what the scriptures say, this is what I'm led to believe. If you believe differently, share with me why, and we can converse. The guidance, okay, so here's the pictures. The guidance of our teacher, who's Yeshua. that provides continual cleansing, because that's what the water can do. It can provide cleansing. That's what it does whenever you are immersed into the name of Yeshua. You are now under the perpetual covering of our King, our high priest, in his order, the righteous King's order. His blood and his water provides us that cleansing, a continual cleansing, I add. As long as we stay on this path under him and follow him, remember he said, place on yourself my yoke and follow me, learn from me. We will be led to that door. Yeshua was the only way that leads to Yahweh. He is leading us through this physical world so that we can partake in the spiritual inheritance of the millennial reign, the first resurrection. Remember, flesh and blood cannot inherit the eternal reign. So we got to be glorified through this spiritual cleansing in this process. So when he comes back, we can then partake in that inheritance of that first resurrection. So as long as we got our eyes on him, we're focusing on him, we can partake in that. I was talking to Brother Rick last night on the phone, and he'll have to jog my memory because I forgot who I heard this from. I think it was Don Esposito. I heard it from him. He said that it really doesn't matter how you start, it's how you end up. And that made complete sense, because how we end up is the most important thing, because Yeshua said, endure to the end that you may be saved or rescued. Because I think we can still fall apostate. Actually, I don't think, I know we can. We can fall from the faith. We can fall from the belief. And it happens. We can get to that in Philemon when Demas, or Demas, however you pronounce his name, he fell away. And I think it says that in Colossians 4, verses 16 and 17. I think. Don't quote me. We can go to that and look at it if you want. But he gives off some names: Aristarchus, Lucas, Marcos, Demas. And some of these guys fell off. They began good. They began in the faith. But that's what he meant was very powerful to me, because it's not how we begin, but yet it's more so how we allow ourselves to come at the end. It should always be a constant corrective, disciplinary process on behalf of our own lives, where we can work on little things to correct and to add to make more perfect for our Father, who's perfecting us throughout this whole entire way, so that way by the time that comes, he can say, well done, good and faithful servant. We got to remain faithful all the way to the end. We got to endure, persevere through all this. He is leading us through this physical world so that we can partake in his inheritance, that spiritual kingdom that will be coming here. John 10:9. Remember, this is our leader, Yeshua, saying that he's going to lead us. What does he say in John 10:9? I am the door. Whoever enters through me, he shall be saved or rescued, and shall go in and shall go out and find pasture. Wonder where he got this. Psalm 23, verses 1 through 3. Yahweh is my shepherd. What does a shepherd do? He leads us and guides us through that perpetual cleansing of the waters to that door. What did Yahweh say in Deuteronomy 18? I'm going to raise up a prophet for you from the midst of your brothers. I'm going to put my words in his mouth. You shall listen to him. If you do not listen to him, I will require it of you. Yahweh is my shepherd. I do not lack. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. What did Yeshua say in John 10:9? Whoever enters through me, he shall be saved, and shall go in and shall go out and find pasture. Go in and out of what? The door that Yeshua is. It's through him that we can get to the Father. It's through that seed that we can access the Father to get from the holy place to the most holy place. Look at verse 3. He leads me beside still waters. He converts my being, or he turns back, shub to shuvah. He turns back my being. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Hallelujah. So how incredible is that? Just from that word lamed, to teach, instruct. Yahweh's our shepherd. We should all universally come together to understand that Yahweh is our shepherd and he's the one who's leading and guiding us to that door through what? The seed, Yeshua, you know? That's right. Jackie says Hebrews 12:5-8 and verse 11, he disciplines us because he loves us. Very right. Just as a father loves his son, so Yahweh loves you. So don't hate or don't loathe when he disciplines you or chastises you. Going back to the other word, disciple. So this would be the noun format here. The other was the verb format. So here we've got Strong's Hebrew number 3928, disciple or taught one. Same word, but we've got the wah, the tin peg, and the yod. Those two are added. What is the function of a disciple? What did Yeshua commission us to go do? Started off the teaching with Matthew 28. If I can find that note. Verse 19, then having gone, disciple or teach all nations. Okay, so we are to lead others. You can say by the hand. We can lead others by the hand. You know, look at this. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink it. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. We're to lead people through a certain belief system of works that will, you know, this word here, the yod, can mean to work, to throw, or to worship. Yeshua said in John 4:23 to worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for he seeks such to do so. So by the proper leading in the proper worship in spirit and truth will lead us to the proper cleansing through Yeshua. And this is what a disciple, this is what we're raising up. Let's raise up a nation of disciples. What's really on my heart is the youth. You know, this next generation that we really need to focus in on and raise up, because this next generation will only be as good as we leave it and how we taught them. So if we can properly lead them and guide them in the way of proper worship and works-based righteousness that will provide forth cleansing through Yeshua, well, then that will secure them to that door, who Yeshua is. And it will lead them to that so that they may have life everlasting as well. And now it's hard to lead people because people can be stubborn. I can be stubborn. People can be difficult. I can be difficult. But when we understand the context of the scriptures on how to lead and guide people to the rivers of life, to the tree of life, well, ultimately, the responsibility is on them. But we can take the word, which is the blueprint of how we're to make this spiritual house, who Yeshua is the cornerstone of. And we're living stones built upon that cornerstone. We take that blueprint and we show people it's simple, it's super easy. Here's how you do it. You follow this path right here. We educate people along the way. We help them grow in their knowledge and in their learning, only so it brings glory and honor to the King. Hallelujah, to the Father. It's not for our own self-glorification. It's not for our egos. It's not for our own financial gain. It's for the people. It's the only reason why I do this, because it's for you and it's for the people. And this next generation is really up against a big fight. I mean, you think of those that are in public school, you think of those that are in private school, they're getting bombarded by all types of information coming from every which direction. Cellular phones given to babies and toddlers and little kids at such a young age. And I mean, they're so vulnerable to 24/7 nonstop access to information from all outlets. So they've got a heavy influence of this world shouting at them from every direction. I guarantee you, it's just a system of abuse. My children don't have cell phones. My oldest son has a Nintendo Switch, and I'm very strict about what he plays and how long he plays it. And I just don't want them to be brainwashed by this kind of stuff. And what is a Ute? A Ute? I don't know. I don't know what a Ute is. Did I say a Ute? Not sure. But maybe you can clarify that. If I said it, I don't know. Or maybe you misheard what I said, or I don't even know because I don't remember saying something like that. A Ute. Uh, does that say Ute? Y-U-T-E. Yeah, I don't know what a Ute is. Um, but this next generation, look, I want to talk about atheism because they're going up against this new religion. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, atheism wasn't even a religion. No one came out and said they were an atheist back in those days. They were closet people. They hid that. They didn't reveal that because America at that time was way more into evangelism, um, much more than today. But if you look at Google Trends and youth, yeah, maybe I said youth. Flip phones are okay, but not a smartphone. I lost two of my grandchildren to smartphones. Smartphones are a hard one; they really are. You got to have some really strong monitoring for them. But the youth, YOUTH, the younger generation is what we should be aiming for to really help them. Um, so we need to make like a fun, interactive way that they can learn and grow this because a lot of times it just seems boring. You know, they don't understand. And I'm not saying that's our fault. I'm just saying it's the time that we live in. They have so many facets of entertainment right at all of our fingertips that they can get involved with, and especially whenever they see other kids with cell phones and video gaming and all this live streaming with video games and all these other people out there, you know, that plays a really big role in an influence of a child's life. And Shaul had said, you know, uh, be careful, evil company corrupts good character. And so I think as parents, we really need to know who our children are hanging around with. Just because the child looks like a good worldly kid, I mean, he's going to put some good worldly influence on your Torah observant kid, or he's going to confuse the mind and allow the enemy to come in and use that as a footstool to bring corruption. And so, yeah, um, it's a tough battle that we're against, but we can do it together. And by sharing our ideas with one another, we can raise up an army in this next generation that will, um, you know, be ready. We need to. Kifa says to always have an answer, to be ready to give a defense when someone asks about the hope and glory within you. So we have to be able to raise up our children. So when someone says, "How do you know your creator is real?" You know, they can't come back with a response that will be beneficial for someone like us that will like. But we need to be able to know how to respond to them because oftentimes what it boils down to is it's not so much that atheists have a problem with even acknowledging that okay, there's probably a higher power or some other evil realm. Yeah, I get that. It boils down to submitting to another's authority and another's will and being told how to live, and that's where the whole burden comes upon the person that doesn't want to do it. The burden is on you if you don't want to live out an obedient lifestyle unto Yahweh. It's not a burden to me because I want to do it. I want to please Him. And I believe you here all want to please Him as well too. So that's all I've got for y'all on this Shabbat. Next week, I'll be out of town and I'm going to try to broadcast a live stream. I don't know how to do that. Well, I mean, I do know how to do it, but what I'm saying is I don't know how to. I'm still trying to learn the ins and outs of all this social media production and everything. I've been YouTubing it and trying to spend a lot of time on how to do this to make it the most efficient and interactive for you, the viewers, to have something to tune into. So if I don't have your email and you're not receiving, check your spam folder too. It will probably it'll come in from the email address ymtx777@gmail.com, but it won't say that in your inbox. I believe it'll say Christopher. And I'm trying to design the layout of the newsletter to keep everybody informed with upcoming teachings or events or little subtle things that are going on just to keep y'all informed. I'm the one writing these as well as putting together the teachings. It's time consuming, so I don't know how many I'll be able to do. I don't know if I'll be able to do weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. We'll just have to kind of roll with it at first. And if you are on the email list and you received it twice, it's my fault because I don't know how to. Thank you, Larry Payton. Yahweh bless you. I don't know how to go in and put the newsletters on there to each other individual that I add. I'm still trying to learn that as well, so bear with me. I'm not trying to spam your inbox with a bunch of incoming newsletters or anything. I'm just trying to send out like a weekly or monthly, a bi-weekly type of newsletter to just keep you informed. So please subscribe, tap the bell so you can get the live notifications when I do broadcasts from different places. We'll be going somewhere for Passover, and I'll be broadcasting live from there. That way y'all can tune in. And Karain, may Yahweh bless you abundantly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Try to hook me up with some people there in the UK. I would love to try to get in talks with some people there in the UK. That'd be great. At least to have some other subscribers from the UK, that'd be really cool. Trying to think what else, any other announcements. I'll be doing Passover in April. I know there's other places that are going to be doing it in end of March. I think that has to do with the equinox, the spring equinox, whether the full moon that falls before it determines or not the full moon, the crescent moon that falls before the spring equinox determines their observance of Pesach, or if it's the new moon after. I've always gone with the new moon after the spring equinox to determine Passover. The calendar is not my strongest area of understanding, but there's always room for growth. So in due time. And then again, if you're not subscribed to the email list and you want to be, and you want to receive the updates of the newsletter, shoot me an email. So I have your email, ymtx777@gmail.com, and I can add you to it. And then outside of the chat section here, comment in the video. Tell me what you think, what a teacher is, how we're to raise up disciples in the nations, what we're to do, any other of your questions. If there's something that you want me to look into and study and bring a teaching on, the parables, I've already got one, so we'll put together something on a parable and we'll teach on that. The parable of the sower is one I love, so I might go on there because I've already looked into that one a lot. And until further notice, Shabbat Shalom to you all, and may Yahweh bless you abundantly. May He protect your minds, your hearts. Remember to always keep your flesh in subjection. And if you feel weak, if you feel like you're tempted or there's a temptation coming your way, don't be scared to reach out to someone, because that's what we're here to do. We're to bear each other's burdens. We're to lift one another up, and we're to try to keep each other from sinning against our King. So always reach out to people. And the spiritual gift of teaching communicates scriptural truth and motivates men and women toward a life of righteous obedience to that truth. You have that gift from Yah, Brother Chris. Shalom. Thank you so much. That means a bunch. That's really awesome that you say that. Thank you. And that is a really good definition there. I don't know how to post that. It's 9 p.m. here in the UK, Chris, and so when I did mention you're hanging out to one or two folk, I think they are out Saturday night. No worries at all. That's all okay. I appreciate you guys coming in. Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to end this hangout, and we will see you next time. Yahweh bless.